Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. I'm very excited to be speaking with you today about the four megatrends that advisors are going to need to interact with the megatrends that have created the reality that independent financial advisors will need to deal with over the next 10 years. Now, before we start, just check your email. I sent a workbook together. I sent a workbook through that you can use to follow along. There are a lot of good resources or exercises in that workbook, so you can get the most out of the webinar today. We're going to start this webinar talking about megatrends, so shoot your questions through. I'll get to those at the end of the webinar. Before we get to questions, though, after we talk about the megatrends, we're going to talk about some strategies you need to use to effectively navigate those four megatrends. So where did this information come from? My team and I, we spent dozens and dozens of hours distilling learnings from a bunch of different places. FINRA, KITSES, the Milken Institute, NAPFA, Wisdom Tree, Kansas City Fed, academic articles, so you don't have to. We researched those all in search of a very specific question, which is how can independent financial advisors break through the noise and build an enduring business? So why am I the right person to speak about this? Well, I live at the intersection of financial advice and marketing is crucial to building an enduring business. I'm the product of a financial advisor. I grew up in the family business, kind of. That showed me what it's like to build an advisory business on the nights and weekends, pretty much growing up. I got my first job out of college at Barron's. I worked at the FT. So that means I learned to speak the lingo of sales and how other financial advisors were doing things. I was going to conferences, learning what other great advisors were doing. And then I worked at a marketing technology company. It was called BrightTalk, and I learned about content creation. I started my own webinar services business in 2020, 2021. That evolved into independent financial advisor marketing, which serves that market, the independent financial advisor market specifically. And to top it all off for fun, I do Ironman triathlons. That teaches me about logistics and time management and energy management and endurance. And endurance is all about, it's the name of the game today. This is all about how to endure. In order to endure, you got to start the journey, right? The first thing to do is get a good map of reality. Because if you don't know where you're going, you don't know how to get there, right? It's hard to get there if you don't know where you're going. When you look at a map, you want to identify where those obstacles are. And you need to know the history of the terrain. It's a lot better to know the history of the terrain so you can play that game correctly, right? So our first stop is the first horseman, and that is the first mega trend that advisors need to think about. And this is government policy. What a great place to start. That's a little bit a quick history on how people started needing financial advice. Amex created the first pension system or pension in 1875. A couple other companies followed. That was funded entirely by those companies. It was probably an incentive to work there. Then a guy named Jacob Javits, he realized that that was a threat to the American pocketbook. So he introduced legislation to not have this power in the hands of corporations, right? That makes sense. What this brought us to is ERISA. This is President Gerald Ford signing the ERISA Act in 1874. That stands for Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And this ERISA was created probably with the best of intentions. Pensions weren't being managed properly, so the Ford administration mandated that retirement funds were to be managed by the individuals rather than the companies they worked for. Okay. This effectively put the onus of education on the individual, or financial education, and 50 years later, it had less than stellar results. This is a 2023 map showing our country. The literacy rates are pretty much meh, right? For being the wealthiest country in the history of the world, this is pretty disappointing. The states with the most millionaires, California and New York, those are the financial literacy rates, and those most populous states are at D. Not quite failing, right? You got Montana looking down on Idaho. And congratulations to Nebraska and Florida. You're doing great. Now let's look at financial literacy rates by type of product. These account types, which are synonymous with retirement or unretirement, right? Nearly a half of the people don't know what a Roth IRA is. 4 in 10 don't know what a high yield savings account is. This is information by MarketWatch. That's 2024 information. This is a map of the US according to which grade the state's financial education received in 2017. And 5 states got an A: Alabama, Missouri, Tennessee, Utah, and Virginia. 19 states got a B, but our most populous states, they didn't receive an A, not a B, not a C, not even an F. They received an E. I think that's a typo. Maybe we can look at this a little bit more thoroughly. The financial education of students in 10 states, which represents 3.5 billion or million students, that's nearly half, 50% of high school students, they received a failing grade in financial education. Worse than failing, they got an E. We are failing our future in financial education. Let me just restate that. We are failing the future in financial education. Is there hope? Well, if Arissa told us that we need to educate ourselves on finances, we got a solid C on that. Tech steps in and they fix things, right? No. Second horseman, the second megatrend is tech. This is the retail ecosystem as of 2021. This is a very scary chart, right? Well, the scary thing about this chart is not that there are so many convenient ways to do our own investing. I think that's a good thing, right? There are 2 scary things about this chart. First thing, AI is not on the map. This is 2021. AI became mainstream November 2022. We kind of have a love-hate relationship with tech in general because it accelerates everything, right? We also love that, kind of hate it. It's also too fast. AI accelerates this acceleration. The second scary thing isn't the portfolio monitors or the crypto or the ability of the people to do their own modeling. It's the place they're getting the ideas. Tech's made it easier than ever to educate yourself on exactly which stocks to buy. And in 2021, the price of one stock climbed nearly 700%, driven in part by traders discussing the company on a Reddit chat room called Wall Street Bets. And that company was GameStop. And it was driven by this guy, Keith Gill. His name is Roaring Kitty on Twitter. He's not a bad guy. He has a CFA, worked at MassMutual, and he left the mainstream after this whole debacle. He left MassMutual. He's getting back into the market now. He tweeted that he loves memes, hence the meme craze. Joining everybody else that got in with him over the past few years before that. This is what the FT had to say. Roaring Kitty's back. Existential sigh. Thanks, Ben Affleck. But just because he went away doesn't mean other people in the market that were obsessed with the meme stocks, they backed off. And if we remember during COVID, when people were stuck at home, they started putting their money into the market. That was in 2020. After GameStop, it didn't stop, right? This is GameStop right here. People freaked out a little, but then they kept coming back. This is Visual Capitalist information saying individuals poured a record-breaking $1.5 billion with a B into the stock market every day in February 2023. GameStop didn't like that. Gabe Plotkin didn't like it. But you know who loved it? Robinhood. Robinhood loved it. CB Insights reported that Robinhood has helped 12.5 million customers take control or greater control of their financial lives. And that little surge of accounts we're seeing right up here, that's GameStop. It's also probably a little bit of crypto, retail investors getting excited. I would call that Arissa 2.0. How did they do this? How did they catch and retain so many people? Robinhood, I mean. Well, they made it really fun. You buy a stock, your phone shakes, you get confetti. I hear that if he doesn't get the Treasury Secretary job, they're going to hire Jamie Dimon to call you and give you a call every time you make a trade and say how much he respects your decision. That's a joke. AI is probably going to do that. The point is, they made it really fun. All of this is to say that since the end of World War II, bolstered by ERISA, Americans hit the lottery of being able to invest on their own. Now, hitting the lottery can be wonderful if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, it's like giving a 15-year-old a Ferrari. It's not going to end well. Often people just don't know what they're doing. For example, husband didn't tell his wife, she kills him, she spends the money. People go to the casino, they buy drugs, they go clothing shopping. Money amplifies your habits. And even the most high net worth people don't know what they're doing because their judgment gets clouded. Unless you have somebody that you really trust telling you what to do. And that's where a financial advisor comes in, right? Right? Well, no. Horseman number three, social media. They love the social media, right? Where do people go for financial advice? They go to the finfluencers, of course. They go to social media Reddit. And honestly, social media Reddit is not favorable to financial advisors. This might be kind of painful to look at, but if we want to push on the world for what it should be, we have to see the world for what it is. And we cannot look away from reality because a few people actually take this seriously. And it's not that everyone goes directly to social media because they have a financial services friend or they don't have one. After all, we didn't all get an F in financial literacy. We got an E, right? This is research from a Northwestern Mutual's 2023 Planning and Investing Progress Study. 31% of people say their financial advisor is the most trusted source of financial advice. Perfect, right? But 70% of people that aren't, but 70% go to people that aren't financial professionals. They aren't the people that spend time and learn about it and offer that as a service, right? And that little 3% down there, that's the influencers. 3% is not little. 3% is how you get disrupted. Disruption happens when you disregard the small player eating up your margins, your small margins, that the ones you didn't care about, when suddenly they're a bigger problem than you realized. And that's exactly what's happening with content creators giving out financial advice. Because if you follow the money, you realize these content creators aren't going to stop. There's just too much money involved. $500 million, and that's the year 2030. We're right here. Creation of video and text, graphics, audio content. This will nearly double. This is more than going to double in the next 6 years. The obvious issue here isn't that content is being created. Well, it's who is creating it instead. The people that are creating this content aren't always giving accurate advice. Well, why? Because the advice isn't customized. And honestly, the people are not qualified. Some are qualified. But at the end of the day, they're still strangers. Why do people trust unqualified strangers? Well, we're going to get to that in a second. I'm really sorry. This isn't a very good slide, a bunch of text. It's not really pleasant to read. But that's actually the point. They trust unqualified strangers because while they might be unqualified in financial planning, they are overqualified in content creation. So I'll pose a scary question. What if they get their CFP? That could take 5 years. Other scary question. What if they hire someone with a CFP or a CIMA or a CFA? I think the best question is, are you going to resist them or are you going to join them? But before you jump really hard into creating a podcast or start posting on Instagram stories, you should know that to do this requires a lot more different skills. This is the Creator Economy Map 2021. There's a lot going on there, right? This does not include editing, distribution softwares. YouTube's not on this. This is a checklist that we put together of all the things you need to think about when you're creating a podcast or a webinar. It's a lot to think about, right? But this is what those creators are thinking about, and they're engaging these systems when they create content for the world. So again, I ask, are you going to fight the content creators, or are you going to double down? If you double down, you will find clients. I think success in that regard is a mathematical inevitability, but only if you don't quit and if you have the right systems in place to produce something that's quality and that does not leak data. And if you need to be able, and you need to be able to speak the language, the kind of interface with the tech to get the work done. Having a native tech language speaker isn't a requirement, but it does save a lot of money because advisors are pretty good with tech already, right? But if learning these tech platforms is a language, it's kind of like learning Python in your 50s and you're competing with this girl. This is a real picture. It's not AI generated. She is 40. That's 1989. That's my sister typing on a computer. It was like $3,000. And we always joke with my dad, this is the last computer he's ever going to need. That's what he said. That's pretty funny. Tech is always advancing. That is a certainty. But seriously, advisors are getting a lot better with tech, right? They're generally staying up to date. They're not carrying these old things around. They can go to the beach with their iPad. Cerule's State of Wealth Management report said how well you guys are staying involved with tech. They said e-signature is the most frequently used technology among financial advisors. 92% of advisors do that. That's up 22 percentage points from 2019 to 2022. That's probably COVID. COVID forced the tech on you. The technologies that are most frequently cited positively impacting the client experience was e-signature, video conferencing, and client portal. Also, like internal business stuff was really impactful for the advisor productivity. Video conferencing, e-signature, CRM, really important. These are the latest advances, e-signature. Maybe we could do some estate planning from the beach. So the challenge is not going to be adapting to technology. That's going to keep evolving, right? You're going to need to do that either way. Challenge is the fourth thing, the advisor birth rate. These are the people that natively speak the language of tech. This is the future of the industry. And I don't know if getting sand in your iPad is like keeping advisors out of the industry, but maybe they're just opting out. There is good news though. 43,000 advisors are expected to join the industry by 2030. That's data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But it's not that great because over the next 10 years, 109,000 advisors plan to retire. So this does not counteract the death rate because that's how math works. So that 43,000 is not enough. So a critical thing is how many of those advisors will stay in the industry. But there's a 72% failure rate for rookies. So we're pretty much looking at infant mortality. If this were a country, we would be in sub-Saharan Africa instead of in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. So to top all of these other things, we need to improve the birth rate. I can't give much advice on a webinar on that. All right, we can take a breath and just refocus. We've taken a good look at reality, and we can recap now. We got Amex, Javits, Ford's deregulation. This gave people the independence to invest on their own, but financial education really didn't keep up. Second, we had the tech, which supercharged this and made it fun yet irresponsible a little bit. Other tech gave anybody, regardless of qualification level, the ability to give advice, and they will continue to do so because money, and we have a population problem. The ones who are most likely to give good advice in the future, the baby advisors, they're not surviving into adolescence. All this makes sense? Just put a 1 in the comments to make sure you guys are still here. All right, one. So I've promised a lot here. There are some solutions that I could bring. How do we move forward and how do we make being a financial advisor, do we make it easier so that there won't be a 72% failure rate? Do we just, quit being an FA, get into politics, change the laws? Maybe that's a better approach. Well, if we reframe the question, how can we look further up the food chain? How do we build an enduring business that can just withstand government policy changes? It can withstand a changing tech landscape. It can withstand a public that doesn't appreciate the profession. And how do we improve our rigidness to adapt? Well, we need to look at the one person who has the ability to change all this. It's not Tony Robbins, but he did say the defining factor for success is never resources, it's your resourcefulness. So we need to look at ourselves because we are awash in resources. We have knowledge, we have culture, we have technology, we have clients. What do those clients have? Those clients have kids. We focus on the kids, right? This is actually what advisors admit is their number one thing they need to improve on, which is getting to know their next generation heirs. This is data from Natixis. Pretty funny, right? Fascinating. 28% say client comms is what they need to improve upon. In the marketing world, most clients don't leave because of bad experience. They leave because of perceived indifference. They didn't feel special, right? Millennials love feeling special. Anyway, focusing back. In so many ways, the next generation are going to be the key to the future, right? They're also the key into the door. So you got to get your foot in that door. Let's talk about how to do that. I promise this is not going to be a whole thing about social media and influencers, but the concept of social media does provide us with some strategies. Because social media is just the latest thing. People use it because it's so easy to consume. It's just right at our fingertips. They feel comfortable consuming it. It's entertaining. And we need to move above social media, above the influencers. We need to think about what they've created as a byproduct of content, which is trust. Why do people trust them? Why do your clients trust them sometimes? Well, first, they don't need you. They're here to help. That's the first reason people trust them. But it's not the only reason. It's because they're planners. They are very strategic about their content creation. And when you're strategic, you can be consistent because you don't lose the forest for the trees when you're strategic. With their consistent positive exposure to their knowledge, they've built the one thing that advisors have lost, and that is trust. So, how do you create trust? I'm going to demonstrate this with a story. This is about a little girl and two grown men wearing Santa suits, well, Christmas suits. The first grown man, which is me, she has no problem being held by me. She knows me. She sees me every day. I'm her dad. She trusts me. But when I hand her to a man she's never seen before, she doesn't know that I know who he is. She gets sad. She gets worried. I'm not worried. I trust Santa Claus. I know he's a friendly guy. This is the truth that I have been exposed to. But she disagrees. We can zoom in a little bit on this. My daughter trusts me because she sees me all the time. Thinking about this from a content perspective, content or consistent content equals trust. Consistent exposure equals trust. Also, a Christmas tree themed jacket is always a big hit. You need to increase your exposure to your audience, and you will increase your trust with them. Whether that's in person or virtual, doesn't really matter. But when you host consistent content that delivers value and people see you more often, they're going to be more likely to trust you. I just want to say that one more time. When you host consistent content that delivers value and people see you more often, they're going to trust you. In other words, repeated positive exposure creates trust. Positive exposure happens through education. You learn new things. You get excited about new things. You can implement this. Oh, I didn't know about the Dutch Irish sandwich. And then you, the financial advisor, you get calls to avoid taxes, buy some Apple stock. Instead, you can be the source of that education, whether it's to the client or to their kid. You can be the constant source of value. But you already know this, right? You post on social media, you got fans, but you got to ask yourself, are you consistent? How consistent are you? How efficient are you in that consistency? Are you actually driving new business? Can you measure that? We can look at some data from Kitsy's. You may be creating content, but the question is, can you actually track it? Can you track efficiency? Most can, or some can, but only a few do, right? When you do it haphazardly, not strategically, most social media is inefficient, right? And that's getting more inefficient. This is a sheet showing the average efficiency rating by company size for advisory businesses. This is 2023 data. Kitsy says that in 2022, on average, for every $1 in marketing spent, 90 cents was revenue generated. In 2023, in contrast, that same $1 generated 60 cents. Efficiency has gone down. And ironically, it gets more inefficient the more money you make, probably because it's harder to track, but absolutely because you're adding more staff. But regardless of the inefficiency or efficiency, how much are other advisors spending? Well, for those who do track their expenses, it hovers around 9% on average. High growth advisors spend 12% of revenue on marketing. Average growth advisors are spending 9% of revenue. This means that high growth practices spend 25% more on marketing. Kitsy's defines high growth as being the top 1/3 within each revenue band. So we can drill down into this a little bit because it's interesting. If you look at the high growth advisors, that's the top third of revenue, they consistently spend more on marketing. What are they spending it on aside from talent? Anybody want to guess how many marketing tactics advisors use 2023? Well, let's look at the tactics. And thank you, Kitsy's, for putting this together. Client referrals are number one. Centers of influence, in-person social media, in-person networking, social media, newsletters, SEO, blogging, client appreciation events. Custodial referrals is way at the bottom. Hosted a radio show, way at the bottom. Not a lot of people do that. Videos. High growth do a lot of videos. They do seminars, webinars, SEO. Referrals are at the top unless you're high growth, and that means the top 1/3 of revenue of advisors by revenue are during businesses high growth. I would say it depends on churn. Depends if you have a vision too. It depends if you can predictively or if you can create predictable systems to identify clients, do outbound, and create inbound marketing systems. If you can deliver good service, and then if you can retain those clients, right? You got to avoid that perceived indifference. So when you're using efficient systems, then you have the time to adapt to the market. You'll have the space to think about things creatively, think about how to integrate new technology into the business. That's what efficiency gives you, this time and space to be creative. One of these things might not seem like content. Blogs are not written for people. They are written for the big G and A, the algorithms in Google. Everything for the algorithms, people. But to even begin to think about creating an enduring business, you need to be thinking about how to differentiate yourself from the herd and incorporate those things that the influencers are doing. And to do this, you need to create content that hooks, educates, lands, and retains clients. There are systems to do this. But first, you need to figure out how to hook people, how to differentiate. How do you differentiate? Well, you can start by creating content and just be authentic, be yourself. But unless your story is about your audience, it's going to fall flat. You're not going to see results, and then you're going to quit. So how do you differentiate? Well, maybe you put on a nice suit, maybe a meat suit. I would not put on a meat suit. People will definitely walk away. There are 4 ways to differentiate aside from really caring about your clients. First, credentials. Second, targeting a niche. Third, marketing channel tactics stacking, and then the client onboarding experience. Let's take each one of these. I can't talk about credentials. That's up to you. But for the rest of the things, here are some things to think about to help you differentiate and build trust. First, identify your niche. Ironically, you stand out by fitting in, so you got to fit in really well. By focusing on a niche, you're going to gain total clarity because you can increase the resolution of the problem that you solve. And what you focus on expands. So hone in on who your niche is and what their pain points are. Where do they hang out online? In person? Which channels are they using, right? Focus on 3 to 5 channels that helps build those and build those channels effectively. You got to say no to everything else. Focusing brings you from having an audience of everybody to having an audience of 100 to 200 high value targets. The question to ask yourself is, do you have the bandwidth to take on new clients per month? 3, 5, 10, 100. Being omnipresent, second point. Being omnipresent in your niche is about being everywhere they look. All the channels, all the events, but only for your niche. Be findable to your niche. If you can't be found, it doesn't matter if you're the best advisor for 10 years running. You need to be findable. You need to be on Google Maps using SEO. You need to have built a great website. You need to have a YouTube channel. You need to have an Instagram channel. You need to be going to conferences. You got to have a fast website. 5 seconds is a long loading time for a website. People need to be able to find you. That is where lead flow comes from. Next, be automated to your niche. This helps you be omnipresent and efficient. It helps you increase professionalism. It helps you scale later on, and it cannot be manual. Manual is a waste of time. You're going to rationalize not doing everything, and you will give up. Plan your content. Make the customer the hero. There's a great book by Donald Miller called Creating a Story Brand. You, the advisor, are not the hero. You are the guide. Yoda was known as being the guide. He was known as being the best. He guided Luke. So plan your content using the pain points of your customer. Get in their head. Let's look at that list of tactics again, all right? So if you want to be omnipresent, create content for everything, but it needs to be efficient. Start with one. Start at the very top. Start with webinars because they are the most efficient vehicle out there. Why? They are a digital time and place where you've committed to showing up and people register to show up with you. They tell you they're interested, they show you what's interesting, and more importantly, you can create all other content from the content of your webinars. The webinar is the race that you've been training for. If you do webinars once per month, that's where you start. Do webinars once per month. From there, you can create blog posts, video, podcasts, even social media things. You have media appearances. You talk about what you spoke about in your webinar, right? You have a sponsorship. The copy for that sponsorship is informed by what you say in the webinar. It is the most efficient vehicle out there. All right, let's tie this all back to our mega trends, 4 horsemen. This is how you can join the mega trends rather than resisting them. Boom, join them. First, how we fix the financial literacy problem that government policy created? Well, you pick a niche and you be the educator to that audience. Second, how do we join the tech movement so that made it so easy to invest, even if you have a poor literacy rate in your state? Well, you differentiate and educate by learning the language of tech, by using the tech, or you hire somebody else to do it using an efficient content creation system. Next, how do we utilize the ease of consumption that social media allows us to ride? We do that by using it consistently and strategically. You got to be efficient and you got to be able to connect that to your pipeline. You got to know what is effective. Fourth, how do we reduce the advisor birth rate problem, the future of the industry, and make an enduring business? We attract clients and talent through the use of tech. It will take times off of your hands to see clients more. That'll reduce perceived indifference. and it enables you to spend more time on attracting the best talents to your business. This helps you be the best known advisor, the omnipresent advisor. This is a strategy for building an enduring business, one that lasts regardless of market cycle, right? Doesn't matter what tech people are using, what government policy is in place, what the new kids are doing. If you become the best known advisor for quality business, people will come to you. Okay, thank you very much. Got some questions here. Let me just check these out really quick. Julia says, what social media platform should I start with? Well, the question is like, where's your audience? If they are tech people, then maybe they're going to be on Facebook more. Also depends what age they are. If you want to target the younger generation, maybe TikTok, figure out where people are. And then you want to start with that platform, right? A lot of people use LinkedIn anyways, because they're professionals. If you have W-2 employees in your audience, I would definitely start with LinkedIn, but go where your audience is and really focus on that niche. Thanks, Julia. All right, Mike says, how to translate live events to digital events. Okay, so you're like doing seminars, I'm guessing, and you want to maybe do webinars. It's much more efficient. Webinars are, like I said, the most efficient vehicle you can have, especially if you're doing events, because you don't have to drive to the venue or buy food and waste the food. You translate those by putting a date on the calendar, just saying we're going to do this on September 24th. It's going to be 2 p.m. That's a great time for a webinar. And then you mark it and start inviting people 3 weeks out. So just put a date on the calendar and reverse engineer it to that. But all the same stuff that you presented in the seminar can be presented in the webinar too. It just matters you're going to do it virtually. Steve says, how do I know what the audience wants? That's a great question. Ask your clients, right? Or yourself, if you know your clients that well, what are their biggest problems? Start answering those questions in whatever content you're creating. Also ask what questions they have in general, right? Anytime you speak with your clients, say like, hey, do you have any questions about this, right? Be really open to questions because that is a good indicator of what your clients are interested in, right? Also ask their kids because that's the next generation. So asking their kids is a really good way to get an idea of what the kids are worried about, right? So you'll need to prepare that for later on. And if you want like an online tool, Answer the Public is a really good resource. It lets you know what the internet is searching for based upon like versus questions or informational questions. Answer the people. Okay. Thank you for those questions. Any more, just pop them through. Or if you're watching this on demand later on, send me an email. I'll put my email up in a second. Okay, so here's some additional resources for being omnipresent. I think these are in the workbook as well, but you can email me, Ryan, at IFAMKTG. That's independentfinancialadvisormarketing.net. You can email me any questions you have about this. If you want a content strategy session, a lot of times people, they're just like, okay, I know I need content created, but I have no idea where to start with the strategy. Click a link on right there, or I'll put it in the attachments, and set aside some time. We can set aside some time together, and I can kind of go through what you've already done and help you make a great content strategy. There's no obligation there, but that is a good resource. If you are interested in talking about what you are doing that you'd like to do, in your practice to make your business grow, come on my podcast. This is exactly what I do. I speak with independent financial advisors, and then I promote it out to all independent financial advisors. Come and talk on my podcast, and we can talk about what you are doing to grow your business. I also put some marketing stack resources on there. Riverside FM is a great way to create or to capture content. Zoom, of course, that we're on right now. Canva is great for making presentations. I also listed some books that are really good for helping you build your business. That one, that Building a Story Brand, that's right at the top. Wonderful business. These just help you kind of mindset as well. The obstacle is the way and discipline is destiny. Discipline. There's a lot of discipline involved in creating content. If you can consistently create the content, that is how you create that trust we're talking about. I have another webinar coming up on September 24th, How to Win with Local Service Ads by Google. These are not having a Google business page. These are local service ads. This is a totally different thing. And I'm going to host a webinar talking about how to do that and how to succeed. That's September 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern. I also include in the workbook the presentation resources. I think it's a really good way, a good idea to have resources because I could just be talking, thinking of these ideas. These are the sources we used to build this presentation, and it's good to just know the statistics of the industry and where the literacy rates are, etc. There's 2 pages of that. Okay. Well, thank you for coming to this webinar. Like I said, if you're interested in the strategy session, email me, Ryan at ifamktg.com, and we will set up a session. Thank you so much.